All right, welcome to joining me this evening. Tonight, I want to talk about love.
Struggling, running, setback, fumbling, fly with y'all, more beyond the frame, but God humbled him.
Love could not be but the perfect topic that we all need to revisit at some point in our lives right now, based on everything that's going on, based on the climate of society, the climate in our churches, especially the climate within our families. This is what we need to talk about. So the first question I want to ask you, what does the word love mean to you? What does the word love mean to you? And let's just understand that love, it's really based on how we view it is based on how we grew up, our parent structure, our relationship with our families, our brothers and sisters, our church family, our co-workers, our environment that we were raised in will largely dictate how we view the term love. Now, society will say that love is basically some emotion that is driven on, but I will beg to differ, and I will argue that love is not an emotion. Love is a decision. Love has nothing to do with emotion. Lust has to do with emotion, but real love, true love doesn't come with conditions. And it's true love that transcends our emotions, that tells us what we ought to do, the right thing to do by that individual, by our neighbor. So this is what I want to talk to, the driving point for tonight. Who is our neighbor exactly? And we're going to come from Luke chapter 10 as to define who is our neighbor, because I think this is very key. This is very important to really build the baseline of everything that we're going to be talking about from here on forward. So let's take this scripture. So we understand what a neighbor is. Your neighbor is anyone who is within your sphere of influence. We got to understand what's going on, the characters that are here. The Jews and the Samaritans, they hated each other. They were not friends. These people were not someone who would get along, who they don't speak to each other, right? Today, we could say one's the Republicans and one's are the Democrats, the far right, the far left. You know, whatever group, whatever camp that you find yourself in today that are completely against one another, you're pro-choice or you're pro-life, you know, pick your poison these days. We all find ourselves in these groups. And if you find yourself in a group that's opposite of what I believe in, all of a sudden you are the enemy. And I don't want to talk to you. Matter of fact, if I had a hell to put you in, I will put you in that hell. And God is saying, no, this is not who I choose you to be. This is not who I am. God says that our neighbor, who we need to show love to, we need to be like that Samaritan who comes across somebody who is in need. And yes, technically we are not supposed to be talking to each other, but I see my fellow man in hurt. But this is why this is an important message that we really need to really get a hold of, especially us Christians. Look at the two people who passed them up. It was a priest and a Levite. These are two men of the cloth, two people that are in the church. These are the leaders in the church who just walked on by, who had no compassion, who had no love, who did not want to help out their fellow man. These are the people who are leading other people. These are the people who are showing the example. What kind of example are you? You see what I'm getting at here? What type of example are you leading? What are you giving? What are you showing? What are you teaching the people? Jesus is saying this is not how we ought to be, regardless of who you are, regardless what color, regardless what your background is, regardless what you believe. We need to help our fellow man. We need to help our fellow neighbor. That is scriptural. That is a commandment. Just love God and love everybody else like you love yourself, showing no partiality. but by showing honor to someone else. If you are to show partiality, outdo one another with showing love and edifying and showing honor to one another. That's scriptural. So what are some key takeaways, to not belabor this video too long? Some key takeaways when it comes down to brotherly love or agape love per se is, you are a liar if you say that you walk in truth and yet you don't love your neighbor. You don't love your brother. You continue to live in darkness. And that's in 1 John chapter 2. 1 John chapter 2, and I'll read it. 1 John chapter 2, verse 9 says, the one who says he is in the light and yet hates his brother is in the darkness until now. Again, we have to love our neighbor. And if we don't, we are a liar. We are a liar. You can easily tell the difference between the children of God and the children of the devil if you don't practice righteousness and love. This is literally a black and white issue. This is really the gravity of what I'm trying to say here. The black and white gravity, the zeros and ones, the up and down, the truth or the false. This is how black and white and how the gravity of this message. If we don't practice love, you are a child of the devil. That's not my words. That's scripture. Let's just go to it. Let's go to 1 John chapter 3. 1 John chapter 3, verse 10 says that by this, and I'm going to go back to verse 9. No one who was born of God practices sin, because his seed abides in him, and he cannot sin because he is born of God. Verse 10. By this, the children of God and the children of the devil are obvious. Anyone who does not practice righteousness is not of God, nor the one who does not love his brother. We have to get this thing about love, what we battle for, all the marches, everything that we fight with our friends and our family over, all these things, the ills of society, the things that what happens down at the Supreme Court, the Roe versus Wade, what happens on the street with the police, what happens at our job, what happens, whatever between the patriarchy and the matriarchy, all these social issues that we think are so, dear to ourselves, dear to our souls, and if we can just get these things right, but how we address these issues has nothing. Nobody wants to talk about love when all these issues has a heart component. It's a heart issue. People want to ask, how can someone go down to Texas and shoot up a school full of kids? Everybody wants to blame the guns, but nobody wants to talk about the person who just used the gun and pulled the trigger. The gun doesn't have a will. The gun doesn't have a mind. But the person who's using it for a weapon of mass destruction, what about that person's heart? What triggers someone to do something like that? What about all the murders that happen in Baltimore City every single year that nobody wants to talk about on a national level? Nobody wants to. Even the people in Baltimore don't want to really talk about it, like we hear some white police officer killing some unarmed black guy. All of a sudden, you want to march and tear up the city for that. All over the nation, cities burning down because of something that's happening that happens extremely small of a percentage of the time. If you look at all the murders that happen every year in this nation, we want to harp on one very specific small sliver of a situation. That's a heart condition. It's a matter of the heart. It's a matter of the heart. And this is what we're getting. Love is the cure. Love is the cure. God is commanding us to love. God is commanding us not to be liars. If you really want to see real change within your family, if you want to see real change within your government, if you want to see real change on your job, show love to the people that you feel are being the worst to you. Show love to people. Show compassion. Have some grace. God says that the amount of grace that is given to us, we need to have that same grace to other people. We need to have more grace. How else do you think we're going to build relationships? This is the one thing that the church gets. We don't do this well enough. Showing grace. We want to wag the finger at what all these other Christians, what they're not doing. But then we forget about ourselves. Now we are still growing and none of us has achieved. But what we can all do right now is show a little bit more love. Treat somebody else with compassion. If you see someone in need, do something about it. Maybe instead of just praying for someone to come along to help that other person, maybe you need to be that miracle in that other person's life. That's what it means by showing compassion, showing some love. This is a commandment. And if we don't honor this commandment, we're going to find ourselves in a place we didn't think we're going to end up. Because we got our little self-righteous. We got, we think that, who dare you, you did this to me and, I deserve, you don't deserve any whatever compassion I have. You deserve it, brother. You deserve everything that comes to you. That's not of God. That's all self. That's all what children of the devil would do. That's all what the world does. That's all the world teaches us how to do. You give respect from earning respect, right? What about you just do what's right? You see someone in need, just do what's right. Just do what's right. Because at the end of the day, we have to answer to God. At the end of the day, when everything's all said and done, none of us knows when we're going to check out. None of us knows. We all live our lives as if we got, 30, 40, 50 years to go and tomorrow's promised. It really isn't. It really ain't. And if we really want to be honest about how we can live an abundant life cohesively all together, it's through the one thing that doesn't give us that one thing that makes us feel good on the inside. It's love. It's really hard to show love to someone that we really don't care for or did us wrong, did us dirty some kind of way. But if you find yourself having trouble doing that, just pray and ask God to help. I promise you, that is the key, that God's prayer works and God will pull through. If you're having trouble loving someone that's really hard to love, that's kind of unlovable, God will help you. God will help you. But you got to have faith. You got to believe that. You got to want it. And if you don't want it, well, you got to reevaluate your relationship with Christ. And that's just being real. That's just being honest. And me saying that to you and not sugarcoating it, that's showing love. Why? Because God didn't sugarcoat it in his word. He said, if you don't love your neighbor, and we already know who our neighbor is, that's just not fellow Christians. That's anyone who's in our sphere of influence. Anyone who can visibly see. It's not anybody who's in close proximity. Anyone who's in the earshot of our voice or in our eyes, whatever. Everybody is our neighbor. So if you see something, do something. Be blessed.